I thought I would be the one sharing lessons with my children about competition, about mindset, and about performance. And instead, I found myself watching and learning and being humbled because what she and her friends have developed at such a young age is something that many leaders, many entrepreneurs, many high performers spend decades trying to figure out. This isn't about dance. This is about how you show up in your life, in your business, in your relationships, in your leadership.
Welcome to Paper Napkin Wisdom, where we share pearls of wisdom shared by some of the world's top entrepreneurs, leaders, and difference makers. Here's your host, Govind Jayaraman.
Hi, I'm Govind Jayaraman, and this is Paper Napkin Wisdom. It is episode 354 and number 32 in our Edge of the Napkin series. So welcome back. And as you settle into this one, you might begin to notice that some conversations feel a little bit different, hit a little bit different, not because just of what's being said, but because of what's being felt underneath it. So the Edge of the Napkin series is where we explore ideas that are small enough to fit on a napkin, but big enough to change the way you see your life, your leadership, and maybe even yourself. And today's conversation is a little more personal than usual. So today you might find yourself reflecting on moments that are coming to an end, or even something new that might be beginning. And you might notice what it feels like to watch someone you love step into their next chapter, while you're still holding on to the pieces of the last one. Because in this conversation, it comes from a place it's very real for me right now. My daughter gets ready to graduate high school, go on to university, but along with that, there are lots of other changes. She's closing a chapter that has shaped so much of who she is. So maybe as you listen, you'll start to remember something in your own life, a season, a relationship, a version of yourself perhaps that required everything from you and gave you something in return that you didn't even know you were learning. And what's interesting is this episode isn't really about my daughter or even her competitive dance time. And yet, through her dance and through her competition and through her friendships, through the moments that really only last a few moments on stage, there's a lesson that began to reveal itself. A lesson that I needed to learn about what it really means to compete, what it really means to show up and give absolutely everything you have and still completely be at peace with that outcome. You may begin to notice how often we tie our identities to results, to rankings, to outcomes we can't fully control. And what might happen when that starts to shift? Because somewhere in this story is one of the clearest, most powerful examples I've ever experienced of something I talk about all the time. And maybe when we're not needing to force anything, you'll start to see how this model would show up in your life too. So as you listen, you might let yourself simply be fully present with it. No need to figure anything out. No need to agree even with anything. Just notice what stands out, what resonates, and what stays with you, even after this conversation is over. Because sometimes the most powerful lessons don't come from what we're trying to teach. They come from what we're willing to see. Let's jump in. There's some stories that are easier to tell than others. And there are some stories that I almost hesitate before I start. Because once I say it out loud, it becomes even more real. And it's something I've been thinking about for a long time. This is absolutely one of those, the ones that are harder, that is. And maybe as you listen, you'll start to notice that this story isn't just about my daughter and her time in dance. It's not really even about parenting. It's a story about one of the most powerful frameworks that I've ever come to understand and how it really applies in everyday life. Focus, align, act. And strangely, as I've observed over this period of time, the best teacher I've ever had for this is my daughter. So, it's the beginning of an ending. My daughter is graduating high school this year, and for those of you who don't understand competitive dance, in addition to it being all-encompassing, competitive dance also ends the year of their high school graduation. So, it comes an ending of something that has been a constant in her life. She's been dancing at the studio that she's in since she was 4 years old. Not dance as an activity, but really it's almost been a second home to her. A place where time doesn't pass, it compounds. Because when I say that she danced, I don't mean that she went in for one class, for one genre a week or something like that. I mean 30 to 60 hours a week over the last several years. And think about that for a second. That's not a hobby anymore. It's not even a passion. It's sort of been the way of her life. And what's interesting is growing up, that really wasn't my world. I grew up in a completely different environment. I was this eldest son of an immigrant family. There were two brothers, and there were sports for sure. And some traditional Indian music and dance in the background, but nothing that really pulled me in. Dance for me was something that I saw occasionally, maybe at a recital, maybe at the National Arts Center. I remember going there once with a friend in university, and she really loved ballet. And I remember sitting there watching and appreciating it from where I was, but not really feeling it. I mean, I could see the talent, but I couldn't really feel it. And that changed the moment, the very first moment that I saw my daughter dance. Because when it's your child, you don't just watch, you see, you feel, you experience all of it. So I saw the 4-year-old who couldn't quite stay in formation and just smiled the entire time, almost hiding behind this lollipop that was bigger than her face. She lost track of the choreography, followed the teaching assistant around, and it was incredible. And the waves from the stage as she exited. And then you blink, and that same child is standing on stage with presence, with control, with emotion, with precision. And she does all of them: ballet, jazz, tap, contemporary, open, musical theater, all of it. And if you really asked her, though, I think her heart really lives in tap. And over time, she didn't just become good at it, she became exceptional. But this isn't really about dance. And here's the real thing: the most powerful lesson I've watched and learned from watching her has nothing to do with her technique or her choreography or her performance. It has everything to do with how she competes, because in her world, competition is real, very real. She competes in group dances, she competes in duets, and competes in solos. And in those solo categories, something fascinating happens. Her biggest competition are her best friends. They've danced together for 13 years now, side by side, growing up together, training together, supporting each other. And they are among the best, not just in their studio, but in their category. And that means that when they step onto that stage as soloists, they're not just performing, they're competing against each other. Best friends standing on the same stage, going against each other, judged, ranked, and scored. And sometimes my daughter wins, and sometimes her friends win. And look, if you know anything about me, the J. Ramans in general, we're very competitive. Monopoly games, competition is everywhere in our house. Cards, board games, level of spice, and something as simple as Crazy Eights can turn on to a full-on event. Voices raised, tears occasionally, and energy is high. We love to compete. And so I've always watched this dynamic with curiosity, because what I expected to see was rivalry, tension, comparison. And what I saw instead was something completely different. They don't really compete against each other. Not really. I mean, yes, that's the way it's all set up on the stage, and that's the way the competition is run, but they don't really compete against each other. They compete with themselves. And it's taken me a beat to sort of understand this because this is not something they talk about as a concept. It's not theoretical at all. It's not even coached to them in some formal way. It's something they've learned to live. They go out and they perform. They put everything out there. They give everything they have in that moment. And they come off their stage and they don't ask, did I beat her? They ask, did that feel better than the last time? Was that my best? And the answer is always honest. It's not filtered, it's not strategic, and it's not performative. It's just real. And then something even more remarkable happens. They just move on. There's no dwelling, there's no overanalysis, there's no attachment to what the judges say, no spiraling based on rankings because they understand something that most of us, adults, senior leaders, entrepreneurs, really struggle with. The outcome's not the point. So there's a reality, I talk about this as the one shift reality. I often compare this to hockey because my eldest son plays hockey and I coach their team. I've coached their team for a long time, and hockey is a game of shifts. You know, you make a mistake, you get another shift, another chance, another opportunity to correct. And we talk about next play every single time when something doesn't work out. Next play. Don't worry about what happened, whether it was good or bad. Just focus on the next play. And that's something I got from Coach K, Mike Krzyzewski, many years ago. But dance is not like that. Dance is one shift, 2 to 3 minutes. That's it. So think about that. Months and months of preparation, hours of rehearsal, precision, timing, and lots of emotion. And then you step on the stage 4 or 5 times over the entire season and get one shot. No reset, no redo, no next play, no mulligan, just presence. And that pressure, it's real. And it's not just the external pressure, the judges, the scores, and probably a lot of parent pressure, but it's the internal pressure. Think about the commitment that it takes to put in 60 hours a week, time after time. That's a lot of willpower. That comes with standards and expectations and identity. And yet, inside all of that pressure, my daughter and her best friends created something extraordinary. And it's that idea of focus, align, and act, lived and not taught, because what they're doing is the perfect embodiment of something I talk about all the time. Focus, align, act. But here's the difference. They're not talking about it. They're not labeling it, and they're not even intellectualizing it. They're living it every single time they're out there. Focus. Focus on what you want. Make no mistake, they want to win. They are competitive. They care. They train hard. They push themselves. I've seen my daughter sprain her ankle to the point where people said that you should be on rest for 6 weeks. And then at the end of that 6 weeks, jump right into competition with her team. It's incredible. They're not pretending that winning doesn't matter, because that would be false. They focus on being the best, on improving, on delivering their absolutely best performance. And here's the nuance. Their focus, though, is not on beating each other. Their focus is on becoming better than they were before. And that subtle shift changes absolutely everything. Because when your focus is internal, your energy stays really clean. It doesn't get contaminated by comparison or by jealousy or insecurity or projection. It stays directed, purposeful, and grounded. Then align. Be with yourself fully. So before they step onto the stage, there's a process that I've seen them go through. I've seen it plainly for my daughter. It's not always visible, but it's a real one. It's self-talk, breathing, presence, quiet alignment with themselves. And here's where that magic really happens. Because alignment isn't about pretending that everything is perfect. It's about being with what is without any resistance. The nerves, the excitement, the anticipation, all of it. And then choosing to be fully present anyway, to love themselves in the moment, to trust their preparation fully, to accept that this is their one shift. Doesn't matter if their stomach's off, doesn't matter if they're not feeling great, doesn't matter if they had a cold or COVID or full on respiratory disease. My daughter has vomited before going on stage with illness. They still go on to it because this is their one shift and they have to step into it without holding back at all. And this is where ACT, going all in, comes in because when they act, when they go out there, they don't hesitate. They don't hold back a little bit just in case. They don't perform cautiously. They go all in. Months of rehearsal, hours of refinement, tiny adjustments, minute, the kind that no one other than them know about. Endless repetition, all culminating in one moment. And they give it everything. Not 90%, not 65%, 100% of what they have. And then here's the part that I think everyone misses, and I think I missed. They let it go completely. And this is the part chokes me up because there's a hug that changes everything. Because after their performance, there's a moment, a really simple moment. They find each other and they hug. It's not a polite hug. It's not a forced hug. It's a real one. And they ask each other, how did that feel? How did that feel? And they answer that question honestly. And then they cheer for each other actively, loudly, and genuinely. Because when one wins, the other ones are often the first one standing, clapping, cheering, celebrating. And if you sit with that, just sit with that. You realize how rare that is. Because most people tie their identity to the outcome. If you win, what does that say about me? If I lose, what does that mean about me? But they don't do that. They have completely separated performance from identity. And because of that, they preserved something that's even more valuable than winning, their relationships. So look, we're taught directly or indirectly that competition means that someone wins and someone loses, and that your job is to be the one who wins. But what if that's incomplete? What if competition is not about defeating someone else? What about if it's really about revealing what you're capable of? Because that's what I see when I watch them. I don't see rivalry. I see these friends pushing each other to become better, to become who they really are without ever needing to diminish the other person to themselves to even get better. And here's the thing, I mean, if you've listened to this show, if you've been around me, you know that I like to think of myself as a teacher. I thought I would be the one that would be sharing lessons with my children about competition, about mindset, and about performance. And instead, I found myself watching and learning and being humbled because what she and her friends have developed at such a young age is something that many leaders, many entrepreneurs, many high performers spend decades trying to figure out. Because this isn't about dance. This is about how you show up in your life, in your business, in your relationships, in your leadership. I remember watching my daughter go into the studio when she was very young, along with her best friends again. And I would sit across from one of their fathers, and most of the older dancers would just walk by us, almost say nothing. But every now and then, there were those special young ladies who'd come by, look us in the eye, and have a conversation. And they've all gone on to careers in engineering, science, pursuing what they really wanted, nursing. All of them are becoming, incredible professionals. We would learn later on that all of them were fantastic students all the way through high school while maintaining these competitive dance careers all the way through. And I would say to this other dad, we would look across the hallway at each other and smile and say, all of this is worth it if they get role models like this. And here they are. Question is, are you competing with others? Or are you competing with yourself? Are you focused on outcomes or are you focused on growth? Are you aligned with yourself or are you fighting yourself? Are you fully acting all in or are you holding something back? And maybe the biggest question is, can you celebrate someone else's success without it taking away from you in any way at all? So this year we are celebrating the end of an era for my daughter and for our family. Our whole family is going through this together because for my boys, we've always attended their sisters' dance competitions together as a family. So as she graduates, this chapter closes. The daily practices, and it's daily, 7 days a week, the competitions, the rhythm of that life. And there's a part of me that feels that deeply because it's been beautiful to watch her grow like this. Not just because of the dance, though, but because of what she has become through it all, what she's taught me along the way. Because while the dancing may change, this will not. This ability to focus, to align, to act, to go all in and to let go, to compete with herself and to love your teammate, to celebrate others without losing yourself. And that gift, that lesson, that power will last her a lifetime. And maybe if you're really willing to feel this, it just might change the way you show up in yours. So here it is. In the end, the real competition was never out there. It was always right here. And the moment we all realize that, everything changes. Make it a great day.